Welcome to Lead Pods, the official leadership podcast from USMB for pastors and church leaders, where our goal is to increase our impact together.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 34 of the USMB Lead Pods. My name is Matt Erzman and I'll be your host today for another great conversation. So today I'm excited to introduce you to a friend of mine, Mark MacDonald. He is an accomplished author, speaker, podcaster. He is an ordained minister. You'll find out in our conversation that in a previous life, he was a touring musician. He's also done stints as a male model. I mean, this guy might be the Dos Equis most interesting man in the world. I don't know for sure, but his resume might just hint at that. Mark is a great guy, and what we're talking about today is figuring out what your church can be known for, and that's in a process that Mark likes to call discovering your thread. So if you do any kind of work with your church's bulletin, with your email, with your website, with any kind of church communication, you know that can be a challenging job. It's difficult to make everybody happy. It's difficult to get the word out about all the different things that your church is doing. And so Mark has some tips and some processes to kind of narrow that field a little bit so that we can all get really, really good, really effective at spreading our messaging for our churches. So I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. Mark is a great guy. He's a fun guy. And I'm really excited for you to get to know him. So without further ado, let's take a quick break and then get right to my friend, Mark MacDonald.
Deciding on the right college is a big deal. At Fresno Pacific University, they get it. They are a private, nonprofit Christian university where your academic success is their priority. The Mennonite Brethren roots run deep from the classroom to the field. Professors connect you to research and internships. Financial aid makes your education affordable. And with our 4-year guarantee, you'll graduate on time to launch your career. Visit fpu.edu for more information about their undergrad, graduate, and degree completion programs. Fresno Pacific University. Possible happens here.
All right, my friends, I'm excited to introduce you to a friend of mine today. Today we are talking to Mark MacDonald. He is the author of the book, Be Known for Something. He is the brand strategist for his company that is also called Be Known for Something. He's also the executive director of the Center for Church Communication. This guy is just one of the big wigs in the biz, and I've gotten to be his friend over the years. I'm really excited to introduce you to him today. So, Mark, thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
You know, you and I go way back, and I think you're a rock star, and so I'm really looking forward to this.
Me too. And this is an audio podcast, but for those of you listening, I wish you could see Mark, because one of Mark's secret weapons is he has a history of also being a model. You might have seen Mark in, some Home Depot ads, like some car companies.
Okay, I better correct you right there. It was Lowe's.
Lowe's.
Yes. So somebody will get riled up if so he's like Lowe's and Ford and Tommy Hilfiger and Two Men in a Truck and a whole bunch of places.
So he's not only a genius, but he's also a good-looking man. So we're very grateful to you, Mark, for spending some time with us. So Mark,
I feel like I need to comb my hair or something. I don't know.
No, you look great. So Mark, you had, before kind of joining in the church communication world, your background is kind of in advertising. I know you did a lot of big ad company work in Canada for a long time. So why don't you fill us in? Anything else in your background, bio, stuff I missed you want to start us off with today?
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, you throw out the Canada word and immediately people go, huh? And so I am from Canada, but I'm a 1-month-old American citizen now.
Yes.
So my wife of 31 years and I, after struggling through the immigration process for 21 years, we finally became American citizens this year, which is it's just sinking in still. I'm still waiting for my first election that I'll be able to vote in. So I'm kind of excited about that. But in Canada, I was from East Coast Canada, and after college, started in the secular side of the advertising business, and then ended up being senior creative director for one of Eastern Canada's largest ad agencies. And the entire time that I was in the agency business working on secular things, I just kept thinking, so why doesn't the church know this stuff? And in a weird other thing that I was doing at the time, I started singing in churches, and people would, bring me in to do concerts. And I recorded an album with at the Gaither Studios with Sandy Patty producers, and so I ended up doing like 300 concerts in 10 years. And through that time, I just fell in love with the church and fell in love with pastors and fully understand the complexity of being a pastor today. I am ordained as a pastor now, which I can't believe I get to do what I get to do.
So tell us more about your company, Being On for Something. I know you work a lot with churches. So what do you kind of help churches do?
I just want to make sure that churches become known for something relevant and needed. Mm-hmm. And whether you call that church branding, because, going back to the 90s when I was traveling singing, I would oftentimes say to a pastor, so talk to me about branding and marketing, and like I would almost like they would pull up a cross, like, get away from me, Satan. And we're a church, we don't do marketing. Mm-hmm. What I found was, if I talked to people about branding, the pastor would oftentimes say, well, we do have a logo. Mm-hmm. And that's like a very small component of branding. And then when we talked about marketing, it felt like too salesy oriented, but yet really what we talk about in evangelism and marketing, there's so many similarities. Ultimately, what we want to do is take a product to a market, and that's what marketing is. Well, talk about a product. I mean, we have one of the best quote unquote products ever, Jesus Christ, the gospel, the power to save, all of that. It's like, so here we have this product that needs to go to a particular audience, like everybody. And we need to figure out, how do we do that as effectively as possible? So that's where I just can't even believe that I get to work in the small area that I get to work in, which is all of the United States with a whole bunch of churches. But God uses me to help evangelize the world for Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it's so important. And I think it's one of those things where I think a lot of churches where, and this is kind of in your book a little bit too, but if you ask churches what they're known for, most probably would stumble around and not really know. And a lot of them would probably say something like, oh, well, we're a church that preaches the Bible, or maybe something kind of generic like that. So can you talk about that a little bit? Like, what should we be known for? And like, how specific do we need to be? Is it just like, oh, we're a good group of people? Or do we need to be known for a really specific nugget? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. What I ended up doing with pastors when I would talk to them, rather than talk about branding and marketing, I would just say, so this is my first time at your church. And a lot of times when I was going to sing, I would end up, it was the first time I was ever in their community. So I really didn't know anything about anything other than I kind of knew the pastor and he kind of knew me, and we kind of got to know each other. So I would oftentimes say, so what do you think your church is known for in this community? And it would stop almost every pastor up, because, I mean, we make decisions. And we're making decisions so quickly because we have so many choices. We have to quickly say, is it relevant to me? Is it needed to me? And if it's not, then we just totally ignore. And so when I say be known for something, I mean, I emphasize the thing. It's like the something, because oftentimes our churches are known for a whole bunch of things. And I mean, you get this, Matt. I mean, in a busy church, there's an awful lot of voices. There's an awful lot of ministries. There's an awful lot of people that want the loudest voice. And the problem is, wrongly, our churches oftentimes think if we just talk a little bit more,
Hmm.
people will listen more.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you need to talk less so that they'll listen more. And you have to concentrate on what we call the thread. You know,
Yes.
what is that one thing that unites everything that we do, that everyone who wants to talk talks under that thread, so that everyone knows us for that one thing,
Hmm.
so that people look at that one thing and say, you know what? That's exactly what I'm looking for. And if they're part of a church and they understand the gospel, they can quickly see how that thread connects to the gospel of Christ. But for those people in the community who have been ignoring church for an awful long time, can I say amen? I mean, the church has just become ignored everywhere.
Yeah.
But those people, a thread will break through because it ties directly to one of their needs.
Hmm.
And then they say, you know what? That's what I need. I didn't expect to get it from a church, but that's what I will even go to church in order to get that thread.
That's great. So we'll dive deeper into the thread idea here in just a second. But first, I want to hear a little bit more about the whole idea of kind of honing in and simplifying your message a little bit, because I hear a lot of churches, and honestly, like where I attend and where I work, we say we are a womb to tomb church. We have something for everyone. And I think there's an element of good there, right? Like you don't want to have a church that doesn't have a healthy kids ministry. You want to have healthy small groups. You want to be active in your community. So I think it's a very natural temptation to try to do everything, and to try to do everything really well, and try to announce everything that you're going to do equally, and make sure everybody's happy, and their little things in the bulletin and the email. And so I've lived out that temptation, because that's what I think comes naturally to all of us. But can you talk a little bit about just the choice overload, and that, especially in the marketing world, just how important the simplicity is? I'd love to hear you talk about that.
So I know you're a creative and I
Mm-hmm.
am a creative.
Mm-hmm.
And like I immediately, when you said womb to tomb, I thought, oh my goodness, I need to come to your church to see your birthing rooms.
Yeah.
But and that therein lies the whole creative thing, is like, oh my goodness, there's a rabbit trail I could go
Yes.
down. No, it's true. It's interesting that there are so many things that need to be communicated in the church.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you try to reach everyone, you'll
Yep.
probably end up reaching no one.
Yep.
And it's a weird marketing thing that if you target an audience, a small audience, you'll end up reaching more people.
Yep.
And it's really tough just to even grasp how simple that is when you start thinking about it.
Yep.
But, effective communication rises and falls on how well you know your audience.
Mm-hmm.
But Jesus called us to even something greater than knowing our audience. He said, no, know your audience so well that you love them.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, talk about what we should be known for. I mean, when the disciples and Jesus were in the room after Judas had just betrayed them, um, it's, I can just imagine they were all like, "Oh, something big's gonna happen here." Like everything, the momentum is being carried forward, and then it's like, okay, well, Jesus, like if we're gonna be your followers, like what should we be known for? Now I realize that's a little bit different translation, but that's the MacDonald translation. And Jesus said, "They will know you're my disciples by your love." And so, what should we be known for? Love. But then how do you look at a particular audience? And the more narrow and targeted the audience is, the easier it is for you to love them and to communicate to them. And you just got to figure out, so how will they receive it as love?
So practically speaking, with the churches you work with, if they were to ask their community, what are we known for? Love is love kind of the goal, or what's the ideal? What should we be striving towards? What should our communities know us for?
Okay, so you need to be known for something. I know we
Mhm.
talked about the thing,
Yes.
but if you ask the average person who does not attend church, research tells us that they know everything we're against.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus said to be known for love, which is what we're for.
Yep.
So how are we doing? Well, we're not doing so hot.
Right.
And so we need to figure out what are we for. But when you ask a great question. So I was traveling this week, met a pastor in an airport, started chatting, and he said, "Oh, wow. So let me tell you a little bit about my church so that you can tell me what I should be known for." Okay. Well, it's not that easy.
Right.
Because ultimately every church is somewhat known for something. That's your perception, and the perception of who's in your audience. The scary truth is that church and the perception of church is pretty low right now. Like, I mean, there's just not a lot of people who think highly of church. Yet when we say Jesus, Jesus, hey, he's good. The perception is quite high. So we need to kind of move away from just being known as a church. And we have to really concentrate on the needs and concerns and goals of our audience.
Yep.
And of course, we have two audiences. We have internal audience and external audience, your congregation and community. And what we need to figure out is, so what are the things that have attracted people who are currently part of your congregation? But then look externally and say, so where in the if you can imagine right now, as you're listening to this podcast, the big Venn diagram, the two circles intersecting. So you need to figure out, so what's the authentic reasons why people do attend your church, and then the really relevant things that are in your community's life that overlap, so that you can be known for something that speaks to some of their needs and concerns, or a path to a goal. And yet when said to external, they go, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. But said to the internal, they say, that's the reason why I attend this church.
That's good. I like that, because sometimes those audiences can compete, right? Like what the internal insiders want or need is pretty often different from what the outside community is looking for. So I love that idea of looking for the Venn diagram and kind of honing. So would you say, is that where your marketing messages should lie, right where the Venn diagram connects?
Absolutely. The more you can dwell between those two circles where the overlap is, the more you will keep people in your congregation, but you'll attract people. And any secular salesperson knows, if you just concentrate internally, you will almost always go into decline.
Yeah.
So, if someone's, Coca-Cola, I better say Coca-Cola, a Coca-Cola salesman, and they say, you know what, we're only going to concentrate on people who are currently drinking Coca-Cola. Well, ultimately, because of death and people changing their minds and moving away, just like in the church, that audience will always shrink. So we need to concentrate externally, almost like what Jesus said. So go and tell and make disciples. And then we need to concentrate and go back to reconnecting with our community by revitalizing our reputation.
One thing that you do so well, Mark, like, so the church, I think we would often say that churches exist for evangelism and discipleship, right? And like you've kind of hinted at this, but a lot of times churches kind of shy away from business vocabulary or business strategy because it feels icky, it feels wrong, it feels like the church shouldn't, quote unquote, need that. But honestly, it like, we're talking about discipleship and evangelism. Like, we're trying to reach one side of the Venn diagram and the other, which is discipleship and evangelism. So I love, like, there's not a need to be afraid of business marketing lingo, right? It's actually the same thing we're already talking about.
Truth is truth. And the world has developed this this process called marketing, and it's all based on the same principles that Jesus built the kingdom and told us to, keep people happy within our buildings. And what does that mean? That's fellowship and challenging each other and holding each other accountable, but also, like, stop just looking at your belly buttons all the time. Like, you got to look outside and actually bring some people in. And I guess that I wrestle, there's a tension, because I talk to a lot of pastors in a lot of denominations. And what I constantly hear is, yeah, but what is the local church really for? And it's like, yeah, we keep saying we need to get our churches to be outside of our building. So if you really concentrate on the idea that the church is a collection of people who have already become Christ followers, then your intention needs to be that how do we disciple people to a point where they will go outside of the building so that they can make Christ followers so that they will come inside of the building.
Yeah.
But we also know that in our day today is that our churches are becoming Jesus promotion.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that sounds really almost crude, but it's like more people in your pew will invite someone to come to church to hear about Jesus than to go out and tell someone about Jesus.
Yeah.
So that's why there's got to be a little bit of a tension there of, yeah, we are Christ followers within the church, but there, I hope if you're a healthy church, you should have some questioners in your following as well.
I want to get to your thread idea here in just a second, because I know that's kind of your main thing. But one thing I want to talk about too is that when we work on simplifying what we're known for, it also helps our congregation members be able to invite their friends and tell their friends, right? Because if we're a church that has 50 ministries and they're all equally important, it's hard to tell people, hey, come to my church. We're really great at do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And we love Jesus, and our worship is great, and our teaching is great, and we have kids. And like, it's hard for the average person to quickly describe their church in a way that is appealing to non-believers, right? But if you kind of focus in and you're like, we love young families and our teaching is biblical, or whatever your church thing is, if you can train your congregation members to know that, that'll help spread like wildfire in your communities, right?
Well, and it's interesting because I really do try to practice what I preach. I mean, I'm traveling a lot, and I always try to talk to somebody on a flight, and I'm just constantly praying, like, Lord, just use me to introduce someone to you. And what I've learned as people come and sit next to me on a flight, they have no idea that I'm trying to do what I'm trying to do. And I try to almost keep it from them. And the way that I know that I can talk to somebody, if I really concentrate on their demographic. So, okay, they look about 30, that I know a person who's about 30 today in our American world, that means that they've just gotten married and they're probably considering kids. So I'll oftentimes say, so, where are you headed? Are you going home? And then as soon as they say I'm going home, then it's like, oh, are you married? And just try to like pivot from one to the other. And oftentimes what I find is that person receives it as, wow, you're actually interested in this from me. But what I try to do, and this kind of moves towards the thread, is I try to pivot my interest in their life to trying to talk about one of their pains or concerns or a goal. Mm-hmm. So if I know that they're considering kids, like I just got back from a flight yesterday, and he was, early 30s. Mm-hmm. I said, so any kids yet? And he goes, oh my goodness, you know what? My wife and I are just considering it. And it's almost like, how did you know that? And it's like, it's magic. No, it's called demographics. Mm-hmm. And so he said, I hate to even say it, but I mean, we're kind of struggling because we're not sure whether we want to bring a child into this world right now. Mm-hmm. And I said, so what seems to be the biggest problem from your vantage point? And I mean, we like, as soon as you narrow it down to a concern or a need, then it's like, I mean, for 90 minutes, we talked about this, like we was just back and forth, and he received it as love. I ended up talking about Christ and how that I found my hope in that. And if I concentrate on the world and, all of that stuff. Yep. But what I have learned is if I talk about Jesus a little too soon, like if I would have said, hey, how are you? Are you headed home? Have you chosen a church to go to in your neighborhood? Do you
Yeah.
love Jesus? I mean, immediately they would be calling the flight attendant to take me off the flight, or, I have a lot of work that I got to get done. It shuts the conversation down.
Right.
And therein lies half the battle with churches today. If you talk too religious to people in your community, they will shut you down and you won't get a chance to love on them.
Yeah.
And so we need to figure out, rather than talk about something like and sum up everything that we do as, you know what, we have a great choir, we have great gospel music, we have really good Sunday school classes. Come and hear the word preached.
Yeah.
Well, people just are just ignoring all of that stuff. They have something else that they need to do a whole lot more.
Yep. Yeah. That shift in perspective is so important. If we want our churches to be, if we want to have any hope, any prayer being relevant in our communities, that shift is so, so important.
Well, I don't know whether you've noticed or not, but the world, like the biggest problem today in the world and in communications, which is church communications, is that people have just stopped listening.
Yep.
Or half listen.
Mm-hmm.
And the church kind of figured that out, right? So if everyone's half listening, we'll just talk twice as much. But the problem is, the reason why that they're half listening is because of all the noise. So then we're talking twice as much, so we add more noise. So we end up having people even listen less. Yep. So like we're creating our own problems. Yep. So we've got to figure out how do we figure out what that thread is, so that people ultimately know what we're all about and what the big benefit of attending the church is. And then it's like, oh yeah, but we also have kids ministry and we have children ministry, but we're all about this one big umbrella thread.
Yep. Gosh, that noise thing is so annoying, isn't it? Because listener listening, I want you to raise your hand wherever you are. If your church has ever had an event, you put it on your website, you put it in an email, you put it on Facebook, you put it on your app, you send a text about it, you put it on your billboard outside, and 8 other things. You host the event, and then you hear later that someone had no idea you were doing it. That happens to everyone, because there are so many competing messages. We are just bombarded with messages. So if you're just, that's why church communication and your thread principle, which we'll get to in just a second, is so important, because everyone is just exhausted with messages all the time.
Yeah. And the biggest problem is that, it's very tough for a booming, energetic church to be able to let everybody know everything. So,
right.
So there's just got to be a communication strategy that calms everything down.
Yes.
So that you're not repeating things, because like our inclination is to, well, if it was just said one more time. And like, I'll go to a church, I can't believe I get to do mystery visits. People hire me to go to church and fly in, and I'll see, before service slideshow of announcements. And then I will hear at the beginning of the service, same things that were in the slideshow being announced again. And then there will be like halfway through the service, there'll be another announcement. And then the pastor at the end of the service, well, remember this week we're going to be doing. And it's like, sometimes it's 3 or 4 times that it's been said. And the more redundancy we add to things, the less people will listen when we actually do say something.
Yeah. We should do another episode, Mark. Maybe I'll put this on the calendar. Communication strategy. I'd love to dive deeper into this, because you're an expert. You have a lot of experience. But I want to keep us moving. Your whole thing is discovering your thread. So what does that mean, Mark? What does it mean for a church to discover their thread?
So what you need to do is figure out the one thing that your church should be known for. And similar to, when you go to social media and somebody posts something and it's a little bit, controversial, and then you start reading. I love reading comments. Like I'll jump into the comments. Well, those comments are a thread to the overall post. And And we need to figure out, okay, so there's lots to talk about with the church, but ultimately we need to talk about one thing. And that thread, that thing that kind of unites everything, it will calm messaging because everyone keeps going back to it. Like, think about the one brand that you always turn to, whether it's Apple computers or Microsoft. Apple is, the one thread, think different. And then, a lot of times when I say Apple, people just say, well, it just works. Mm-hmm. I don't even know whether they've actually tried to keep that as a thread, but a lot of people know it as it just works. And I think that's because on the Microsoft side their thread is it just doesn't ever work. But
agreed.
I probably just lost half the audience at that point. But that one thing is like, it just works is one of those things. When it comes to technology, I just need something that I can rely on that is tested and true and that it just works. Yeah. Well, there's all kinds of things that, Apple, they have laptops, they have oh my goodness, iPods are probably not even a thing anymore. Okay, so iPhone, yeah. They have, applications and software and things like that. All of them can kind of fall under it just works. I know Apple is about technology, so if there's a technological thing out there, Apple probably has it and it just works. Mm-hmm. Yep. Similar to, Geico insurance. Geico, think about the complexity of insurance and all the different things you could talk about with insurance, but they say, give me 15 minutes and I could save you 15%. That's a great thread because it assumes an audience. Mm-hmm. It means people who don't have a lot of time. Yeah. I mean, everyone has 15 minutes. Yeah. And they want to save money. So it clearly defines the audience. Yeah. And it doesn't mention insurance at all. It just works, doesn't mention computers at all. Mm-hmm. And our churches need to figure out what is a solution that people are looking for, because they kind of know your church. So you probably have some spiritual things happening inside your building. Right. But it's like, what is that one umbrella that someone goes, man, that's what I'm looking for?
I think the really, really good, really successful churches are good at this thread idea, threading their main thing through all their ministries, right? So I think sometimes we can unintentionally compete with ourselves when our kids' ministry says, this thing is the most important, but the men's ministry says that, no, this is most important. And our mission, don't forget our missions. And so I think that's a common problem is we have so many messages that compete with each other, but the thread can tie all those things together, right? So can you talk, how can ministries work together on this?
Okay, so here's the highly practical way to do this. So I'm working with a church right now. I think by the time this launches, they'll have already launched their thread. If they haven't, don't tell anybody that I'm saying this out loud. Okay. So what we did, like effective communication rises and falls on how well you know your audience. So your audience, like you've just got to figure out who is your audience. Who's the stereotypical group of people that I really want to hone in on? We call that a persona. The world calls it a persona. And that communication persona, you have a primary group of people. All you need to know is, like Geico, mm-hmm. their primary audience is people who don't have a lot of time that want to save a lot of money. Yeah. So you have to ask the question, so is there enough? Because you might hone in on a group of people, dog lovers who have elderly parents, mm-hmm. And you just have to think, okay, so is there enough in your community that would be attracted to a big benefit that you would have for them? I don't know what that benefit is. I didn't go that far in my little random creative anyway. So
dog sweaters for grandparents is where I went.
Yes, I like it. So you just got to figure out, okay, in your primary persona, and yes, you can have a secondary and you can even have a tertiary persona, but the more groups you are trying to tackle, the harder it becomes. Mm-hmm. So what we did for this church that we're working with, we started looking into, so currently, what are the things that attract people to your church? When we did focus groups, which is just, listening groups where you have 8 to 10 people sitting around in a circle and you just ask them some questions, we clearly heard this is a church that goes really deep into the word, and that we love the theological training that we get here. This isn't a fluff church. This is, a meaty church.
Yeah.
And so we heard that very clearly. Then we started talking and looking demographically, and we see that there's a large intellectual group of people in the community. Do you think we have a Venn diagram here where there's some overlap?
Yeah.
Well, yes. So what we heard was, so most communities, when you look at demographics, are in their 30s, like an average age of mid 30s. And I don't even have to say that I know that most people who are listening to this podcast, if you think about your average age of your congregation, it's probably a little bit more than mid 30s.
Yeah.
So most churches need to concentrate a little bit lower. But when we talk to the 30 somethings in their community, we heard a lot of people say, okay, I don't have an awful lot of time, but I really am struggling. How do I add my academic knowledge into something that I'm not sure whether spirituality, if we can go there. I don't know whether the church is the right place to talk to. Yeah. So we came up with the idea of their thread, which was live deeply. So when you think about live deeply, internally, people are like, yeah, that's what I come here for. It's the deep theological training, and it helps me live a good Christ follower's life. And then externally, they're saying, you know what? Life is tough. I need somebody who can speak to me at a very deep intellectual level. And so live deeply can unify those two groups of people. But internally, like, think about how kids ministry could be about living deeply. Like, to a child, it means one thing, but to a senior adult, it means something totally different. And then even everywhere in between with all the different ministries, can they adopt live deeply? Absolutely, because it's broad enough to be able to accept different groups of people in underneath of it.
Yeah, I love it. That's a great example. So I don't know if you could, I'm curious for people listening, if their church hasn't gone through an exercise like that, they haven't done a focus group, if they're honest, they don't really know what their thread is. What do you recommend? How do you get started with this?
Wow. And I seriously, I do not want this to be a sales call here at all. The easiest way, we have lots of free resources on our website on beknownforsomething.com. If you want, every week I send a really motivational, practical email out on Wednesdays to everybody on our list. All you have to do is just go to beknownforsomething.com/subscribe and give me a little bit of demographic information, mainly because we like to be able to send you stuff that will be perfect for you. But even if you don't want to use us, with one of our paid products, like we do retreats where we come in for 2 to 3 days and we work entirely with you. We go through demographics. And then by the end of the 2 to 3 days, like, we find your thread. It's the fastest process that we have to be able to discover a thread. But if you don't want to do any of that stuff, here's how you can practically do it. Start with going through your church management system, your CHMS, and try to identify, so what is the average age? Are we mainly male? Are we mainly female? Get to know your audience internally, but then look externally and get a really good demographic study. We start every one of our processes with a very a custom demographics. If you don't have somebody to do that, I mean, we would love to do it, but go to your Chamber of Commerce. Sometimes they will know, okay, so here's all the demographic information. What you want to try to do is hone in on what generation is the big generation, and again, it's usually in their 30s, but but look at all the other audiences. There might be some growth there, and then hone in on their needs, concerns, and goals, and then try to figure out, so are we going to become a solution to a need or a concern, or a path to one of their big goals? And then it has to also work with your vision and mission, and like that's like a whole other rabbit trail. But vision and mission and purpose statement and all of those things are very internally focused, where I'm talking about a communication thread that is externally focused. Similar to the way Jesus, when he was sitting at the well and the woman walks up to him, she's there for water. She's thirsty. She needs to take some water back to her family. So does Jesus talk to her about spiritual things? No, he engages with her about water, and then he makes the turn and talks about, what if I could give you water you never thirst again? And that's what the church needs to figure out, how to get them to listen, to engage. And you do that with a thread, which is typically secular sounding, like live deeply, but it quickly can make the turn to talk about, you really want to live deeply? Well, Jesus wants to get to the bottom of everything that you're dealing with right now, and then you can talk about spiritual things.
That's great, Mark. I hope all of our churches listening do that, because if every church did that, just imagine how much more effective we would be in spreading our messages. So it's awesome.
So in the whole USMB denomination, if I see everyone ripping off live deeply, I'm coming after you. No, the thing is that remember, a good thread is unique. It's something that you're offering that's different from everybody else. And then, I mean, Matt, there's so much we could talk about, how you can extend that thread through keywords and become known for it enough so that Google becomes your biggest evangelist, and make sure that it's used on your website and your social media and your email. And that's where your communication strategy, like you have to have a thread in order to be able to have something that will be delivered by Google to your community when they're not necessarily looking for a church.
Okay, we would clearly have to do a part 2, because I would love to dive deep into that. Okay, our time is running out, but one last thing I want to hear your thoughts on. So again, we're friends on social media. So I see your posts pop up, and you briefly mentioned that you do these kind of secret shopper missions where you will go to a church, they don't know you're coming, or maybe one person knows you're coming or whatever, and you just go and you experience it from a guest perspective. And I'm sure you provide feedback and maybe some coaching. So if you're doing one of these secret shopping missions, what are some of the common things that churches do that drives you crazy? And what other as we're wrapping up, what kind of tangible things can we do to make that experience better for guests?
Oh my goodness. Like, talk about open up Pandora's box here. So, I'm more introverted than I come across. Sometimes it's caffeine that makes me a little more extroverted. But my introvertedness, like I'll typically talk to a pastor before I come, and I'll always say, I really don't want to know anything about your church. I want to come in fresh, like I'm a person from the community. And then the pastor is like, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. We're such a friendly group of people. And what I have found is that a lot of churches have gone to what I call the hit squad, where there is like they have a whole bunch of volunteers right outside of the door or right inside the door. And sometimes they're waving, big cards with nice messages on them, or they're, hey, welcome, welcome, welcome. Well, all of a sudden I get through that group, and then it just stops. And it's very rare that I ever get engagement once I get in past the hit squad. And I think that we need to figure out, how do we add that friendliness and guest services? And, I'll sit by myself oftentimes in a pew, and I try to sit away from a group of people so that people fully get that, wow, there's a person we've probably never seen before, and he's all alone. But it's like 99% of the time, no one comes up and talks to me. This has to be demonstrated and told to the people from the stage that we need to be friendlier, and oftentimes I see community happening all around me. And the number one thing that I hear in unchurched focus groups is that they're looking for community. Mm-hmm. Well, when you come in and you're looking for community and you're just craving it and you see it around you and you have no way to break into it, it actually accentuates the loneliness part. Yeah. And so as a group who's trying to evangelize the world for Christ, I mean, we need to figure out, how do we create community, and how do you motivate somebody from moving outside of their group and then actually inviting other people into it.
Yeah. So crucial. Mark, we could talk for days, probably. We have before, but Mark, I need to let you go. Our time's wrapping up here. Anything else you want to hit on before we wrap up today?
Not at all. If I can help in any way, again, if you go to beknownforsomething.com/subscribe, that gives you my contact information. I'll shoot you over an email, and I certainly I'm available, and I would love to talk to you.
Mark, thank you for your time today. Thank you for all you do for the kingdom with churches around the country and just the great work you're doing. Really grateful for you as a friend. And I encourage all of you listening, please do check out his website, check out his book. Lots of practical advice in there that churches could use as well. So let's all do a better job of being known for something. I love it.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Mark, appreciate your time, man.
Thank you for having me.
What would it feel like for you to be living at your full potential? What if you were regularly connecting with someone who accepts you unconditionally, believes in and affirms your potential, actively listens to you, and keeps you accountable to help you reach your goals? A life coach will get you there. Coaching is an intentional one-on-one relationship that empowers people to realize their full potential in personal living and vocational accomplishment. Lead coaching is facilitated by trained MB coaches who serve as a life-on-life coach and is available to pastors, leaders, and anyone. To learn more, visit www.usmb.org/lead coaching or call Ed Boschman at 661-549-6021.
Well, as you could probably tell, that conversation probably could have gone much, much longer. We probably should have Mark back for a part 2 sometime, because he's a great guy, and I know he's got much more that we can learn from him. So many thanks to my friend Mark for joining us, for taking some time. And for you listeners out there, I do think it's really valuable for us as church leaders to spend some time thinking about what our church is known for, and maybe gather a focus group from your community and ask them what your church actually is known for. Maybe try to figure out what needs they have that your church might be able to meet that you're not currently meeting. I think there's a lot of value in there, especially in today's culture, for us to find new ways to break out into our community and serve those various audiences. Love the Venn diagram thing Mark talked about. Lots of good stuff. So I encourage you to check out Mark's book if you haven't read it, Be Known for Something. He's also got a lot of great free tools on his website. And of course, if you'd like to dive a little bit deeper with Mark, I'm sure he'd be more than happy for you to hire him to check out all your brand strategy, or to maybe have him come visit your church and go through some of that stuff. I think you would learn a lot from him. So again, many thanks to Mark MacDonald. And thank you to you for listening today and for joining us each episode, wherever you are. We appreciate you spending some time with us. Again, if you haven't already, we would love for you to subscribe and help us share the word on social media so we can keep bringing you more and more of this content. We're grateful for each of you listening, so thank you so much for spending some time with us. Have a great rest of your week, and we will see you back here again in 2 weeks for another episode of the USMB Lead Pods.
Thanks for listening to Lead Pods. Make sure you don't miss an episode by subscribing to our show wherever you're listening today. Learn more by visiting usmb.org, and be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We'll see you next time as we learn more practical tools to increase our impact together.